All right, well, what is up, everybody? This is Keith, Go Back Gator Guy 231 across the DFS industry. It's Friday as this video is being shot, but we are here to break down Saturday's Champions League final between City and Chelsea. Should be an interesting game. Definitely interesting from a DFS strategy standpoint. I'll go into that in a minute, but I really do think this game, more than almost any other showdown I can remember, like of this size, to me is just really picking sides. I think you can make a really, really good case that you just stack up the Man City and let it roll, which is the way I'm going to lean. I'll explain that in a minute. Or you can go kind of try to maybe go up the middle, play the set takers from both sides, play those type of players, but just be really wrong. And a big reason is that Chelsea, for me, in this game and these previous two matchups, just is not that DFS friendly. We've seen their set takers go all over the place. We've seen Reece James playing in a back three, taking corners. We've seen Mount lose them after being on sets most of the year. We've seen Ben Chilwell go months, it felt like, without taking a set piece, then all of a sudden grabbing a share from Mason Mount. You can just get Chelsea pieces really wrong. And depending on the game flow, like if it's 0-0, or, God forbid Chelsea goes ahead 1-0 on, let's say a non-set taker goal. God forbid Timo Werner would get a goal. But something like that, you can get Chelsea just getting super pragmatic, super conservative, not crossing the ball, not doing anything we want for DFS. And meanwhile, City just onslaughting them. So you got to just be very careful. There's a lot of angles to think about. I'm going to go into that in a minute, and kind of the angles I'm going to. But just a quick reminder, like, subscribe, and comment on these videos. It really does help. I hope that all of you all have enjoyed, a big season of EPL. And just keep two more things to keep in mind as I go through. One, I am operating this out of a cash/optimal lens, higher dollar, single entry. What your most likely outcomes are going to be: higher owned plays, higher owned types of constructions. If you want a GPP lens, check out Galazzo on the channel. Should be a couple videos before this if you're looking at the FSI library from Alex Hooper. Does an awesome job of Tilt City. Really, really entertaining show that we have on the channel as well. He takes a lot of more GPP type of takes, some contrarian constructions for you. So we got 2 bits of content for the Champions League final for you on FSI. So you definitely need to subscribe now. All right, let's talk about kind of how I see it. So we have City as a solid favorite, and I'll just say this just beyond the odds. It is really, really, really hard to beat a team 3 times in a row, much less when that team is Manchester City, who arguably are the best team in the world this season. So that is what Chelsea's trying to do right now. One was not with, City's normal pieces. It was in a game that really didn't matter all that much for City. They heavily rotated. And one was a final, or, a semifinal. So City have not only like a ton of drive because Pep needs to get this off of his back, and this entire team was built to win the EPL. But let's be real, City got all this extra depth, all this stuff to win the Champions League, which they have not done yet since the takeover, since all the money's been infused. So this is a huge, huge game for City. One other thing, actually I guess 2 other things. I've been saying 2 other things twice, but one, when you look at game logs, understand this is just Champions League. These are not the EPL game logs. So despite us having 2 EPL teams, Draftkings only imported the Champions League logs. So there's a little bit of skewing there. And finally, we have one big injury news today. Ilkay Gundogan, one of City's best players this season, really good central midfielder, really, really crucial to what City does, limped off. He's at this point questionable for the game. I would say if Ilkay can't go in, my guess would be that they play both Fernandinho and Rodri. I think that's what Pep would be most comfortable with. You could argue that he decides to bring a striker in. Maybe he brings in Jesus, or he brings in Sterling and drops both KDB and Bernardo Silva into the midfield. But City's just been so effective with this false 9 type of attack where Bernardo and KDB take turns. One's dropping deep, one goes forward, and just gives the center backs a really, really hard time on who to mark. So that would be my guess, is that they just go ahead. He leaves similar shape, plays both Rodrigo and and Fernandinho together if Gundogan can't end up going. All right, let's talk about construction. KDB, first guy in your lineup, should be in cash, 100% owned, should be a majority of set pieces. He or Mahrez will be on PKs. It's been Mahrez lately, so I'm just going to go ahead and assume it's Mahrez. He'll play striker at times, he'll play central midfield at times, but he's pretty much, when he's on the pitch, he's close to a lock for double digits. So I think he's, especially with how soft the pricing is, I think he is your most common captain choice, especially for cash, and should be the highest owned player on the site. From there, I think Riyad Mahrez is the next player in your lineups. Was absolutely awesome versus PSG. 3 goals across the 2 games. Takes some set pieces. Like I just mentioned, he could take some PKs. Just been, especially in 2021, so the second half of the season, I think Mahrez has been up there with as City's most valuable attackers. So I think Mahrez and KDB are your 1-2. From there, I think the biggest decision on the slate, maybe there's 2, but biggest decision on the slate is, are you going to go Phil Foden to really just kind of complete the City attacking trio stack, or are you going to go someone like Mason Mount, who, in my opinion, if I comp him out, I'm not a huge data person, but I still think Phil Foden's floor is better than Mason Mount, despite set pieces, despite Mason Mount probably being Chelsea's most influential player. I still think I prefer Phil Foden. So for me, it's going to be Foden, it's going to be Mahrez, and KDB is the first 3 in my lineup, and I'm filling from there. But I think Mason Mount is going to be plenty popular in cash. I totally get it. I would never call anybody, an idiot or what are they thinking. If you play Mason Mount, I would be like, I get it. I'm just not going to go that route. I think this game, my score prediction on this game is City 2-0. I'm sticking to it. So if I don't think Chelsea scores a goal, well, then their attackers aren't all that important to me. So that's my first 3 in. I think from there, the really decision at that point, I should have played around a little bit more. I think depending on your captain, you could probably jam Mason Mount in still, but I think I like the idea of leveraging off of him. So are you going to go another higher priced Chelsea player, or could you, if you don't think Chelsea's going to score, could you actually play Ederson? I'm toying around with I kind of like the Ederson thought. We're going to have City full strength, defensively. Hell, if Fernandinho comes in, City arguably are even more stacked in the midfield. Chelsea, the second, it's playing pretty rough. Like they're really struggling, really just completing goals. Like even if you look back to the semifinal, so the last time both these teams were pretty full strength, Chelsea didn't create many chances. It was 3 shots on goal. So and Timo Werner, if you've listened to him talk, Timo Werner, confidence-wise, is way low, but they're going to have to play Werner. He, in my opinion, he gives them the best shot of breaking down City. He's, by far the fastest of the Chelsea attackers. I don't think Kai Havertz is fit. And Timo Werner does give them the option of getting behind the City defense and kind of playing through the lines and, making his best chances. So, I don't know. More and more of me is Ederson and cash could be an option. But I do think that, other popular Chelsea cash options are Reece James, which, look, we don't know if he's going to play as right wing back or right center back. It's now been, I believe it's 3 straight games of right center back. Maybe it's 2. Don't hold me to it. But at this point, I think we have to assume he's going to be in the back 3, moving Cesar Azpilicueta up to right wing back, who at the price is a great value. But the funny thing is, you can't even typically, with if a guy's going to be in the back 3 or be a wing back, you just look if there's another center back on the pitch and you go, okay, well, he's wing back. And then if it's a full back on the pitch, you go, okay, he's in the back 3. And the fact of the matter is Cesar Azpilicueta has been the right center back all season. So getting them to have Reece James and Azpilicueta in the game does not help us one way or another. We're just going to see how it goes. And you can get reporter news, but I would just say this. The reason that Tuchel put Reece James back in the back 3 was for speed, was to cover more ground, and he would need that versus City. So I think that at this point, we can assume Cesar Azpilicueta is the right wing back. We can assume that Reece James is the right center back, but still taking some set pieces. How many are you going to have versus City? That's the question. And that left wing back, we should see Ben Chilwell, who's by far, after experimenting a lot with Marcos Alonso it's become very evident that Tuchel considers Ben Chilwell his left wing, primary left wing back, as it should be. All right, that kind of does it for the cash options. So let's just kind of recap that. So we have KDB, Foden, Mahrez, and then depending on the City fullbacks, I think right back should be Kyle Walker. Left back will be interesting. If you see João Cancelo, he's always a really good option. I don't think we're going to see him. I think it's going to be Zinchenko at left back. Zinchenko's really interesting because he's priced fine. Like, he gets super active at tackling. Depending on who's on the pitch, he's taken some corners this year, but he does not cross the ball a lot in open play. So, he's a fine cash option. He would be my favorite of the City fullback. Definitely favored over Kyle Walker. But, I think from a ceiling perspective that Ederson's ceiling is a lot more. So it just depends on the build. Gundogan, if in, I think is a really solid play. I know Alex talked him on Golazo before the injury happened as being elite GPP pivot. I think when you see Monitor News, make sure that they're not saying that he has like a lingering injury from training today. On the Chelsea side of things for cash, you have Mason Mount, you have Reece James, you have Azpilicueta, you have Chilwell. After that, I don't think the cash options are all that great. Depending on who they play as the other attacking option, it might be Ziyech, it might be Werner, might be Pulisic. I think Werner is the one that does not really pose a huge lot of sub risk. I think whoever starts with Pulisic or Ziyech, you probably have to imagine at like 70 minutes, depending on the game, is probably going to be subbed for the other. So just keep that in mind, and neither one of them have a great floor. Ziyech could take some corners, but hell, it's Chelsea. Mount could take some corners. James could take some corners. Chilwell could take some corners. Ziyech could take some corners. Like, do you really want to worry about all that on a dog? So I think no. All right. For GPP, I would just say I like my thoughts of how to attack the game. I think I'm going to be playing all my GPP lines that City wins 1-0, 2-0. I have to obviously do one contrarian that Chelsea wins 1-0, but I think ultimately you can play a lot of like 1-0, 2-0 score lines for your GPP lineups. Maybe do one that's 1-1. Remember, and if this game goes all the way to penalties, goalies do get extra points for shootouts. Also, so does players on the pitch. They get a little extra, so having guys that aren't likely to sub will matter. But I think the immediate thing you do in GPP to get off chalk is fade KDB as captain. And if you really want to get off chalk, fade KDB in general. I don't know if you need to do that. I don't know if I have the stomach to do that. But that's how you can really get off of chalk. But again, you could just immediately just swap to Mahrez as a captain or swap to Foden as captain, and you'll be a little different. Swap to an Ederson captain if the game is low scoring. If it's 1-0 and it's a Ruben Dias header or a John Stones header, you could easily see Ederson being one of the top scorers on the slate. So, again, I've talked about this before with strategy, but when you're building 1-0 or 2-0 score lines for GPP, you really need to include the goalie in that, because a goalie with a clean sheet and win, that's 10 points without even a save. There's a really good shot that alone can outscore whoever the top scorer on the other team, because there's no goal points or there's no assist points. So I think that'll kind of do it. Only other things I'll just monitor would be like the status of Mendy in goal for Chelsea. I believe he's going to play, but if it's Kepa, I think that's a big downgrade. Then obviously a guy like N'Golo Kante, if he can't go, that'd be a huge hole in the middle of Chelsea's midfield. And obviously for City, it would stink if Gundogan can't go, but don't feel sorry for City. City have so many elite players. It would just be a Pep over fiddles, right? Gets the mix wrong. But I think at this point, Pep knows his team well, and I really do think that City, in Chelsea's 2-game win streak against them, take home the Champions League title, win the game 2-0. That's my prediction. I hope all y'all do well. Once again, this is Keith, Go Back Guy 231. Thank you all so much for the support all season. Make sure to keep subscribed to the channel. I will be having some Euro action coming up. With that, I'll say, see ya!